Your employer offers a retirement plan, but it's far from perfect. Perhaps it has high fees or subpar investments, or it's just lacking features that would make the plan more attractive to you. So, what can you do? That's what we're going to talk about in the next couple of minutes here. We'll talk about dealing with what you have, as well as some alternatives outside of the plan. For a quick definition, we're primarily talking about the fees and the investments when we talk about a bad plan. And there's a reason these fees can get out of hand. About 40% of people out there don't understand what the 401k plan fees are, and about 41% think that they pay nothing. Now, this is better than back in the olden days. It used to be 70% of people thought that they paid nothing in their 401k plans. But since then, regulations required that 401k plan vendors disclose this information, which makes it helpful for you to evaluate your plan. Now, you, as a savvy viewer of YouTube videos, you know that fees exist and you know that they've got to be reasonable. And so if you're not getting something out of what you're paying, then maybe some changes are in order. A first step to improve your plan is just to let your employer know, and they may not realize, and especially in these small plans, that's where the fees tend to be highest. It's typically a small company. Maybe the owner is handling everything, including the 401k and hiring people and the financials and doing some operations. It's just hard for them to know exactly what's going on. So it's helpful for you to let them know. And you can even appeal to their interests. I mean, on the one hand, you're just putting them on notice that somebody is paying attention here and you want things to improve. And on the other hand, you can help them help themselves, which might eventually help you. What happens is when a 401k plan takes a lot of the fees, and especially high fees, out of the plan assets, those can keep the checks really small that the company has to write. So the employer might find that appealing. But if you really think about it, the boss or the owner is typically the person with the most money in the 401k plan. So they're paying for it anyway, only it's coming out of their retirement assets. And that's only going to hurt them later. What they could do is write bigger checks out of the company's account, and that might be a deductible benefit expense, which helps to lower the fees for everybody, including them. Obviously, you want to be careful and tactful as you go about this, but you can volunteer to help. You can help them find different service providers. You might even volunteer to be on a committee, but you do want to be careful about taking on a fiduciary or a legal responsibility to the plan if you don't want to do that. So think about helping out, but try to find ways that are acceptable for what you want to participate in. Another strategy is just to contribute as much as it takes to maximize the match, to get as much employer money as you can from the employer in your account, and then do your additional saving outside of the 401k plan. So you might use IRAs, whether that's a Roth or a traditional, depending on what you're eligible to do and what makes sense for you. And it might even be taxable brokerage accounts. I've got videos on how those accounts are actually better than they sound, even though they're taxable accounts. Think about an HSA as well, a health savings account if you're eligible, and you might be able to save as much as you want in partly the 401k and then in these other accounts as well. Another thing to think about is taking out any money that you're able to take out of the plan and then maybe investing that in an IRA. Hopefully it's not a taxable event if you're able to accomplish this. You may be able to move money right out of the 401k into your own DIY IRA or an IRA with an advisor that has better options and better features. So that could happen in a couple of ways. Number one is you might be able to do what's called an in-service distribution. If you meet certain criteria, typically reaching a certain age, you may be able to pull out some money and move it over into your own accounts. Another way to do that is if you have put money into the plan, like a rollover contribution from a previous employer or from your IRA that you put into this plan, but now you realize that wasn't the best move, you can often take that rollover money out, typically at any time. You don't even need to reach a certain age. You can often roll that money back out into an IRA again, so hopefully you can avoid any tax consequences, and then you have full control over the money. Now, sometimes you are just stuck in the 401k, and that's okay. There may be some ways to deal with that. One of the things to do is just search through the menu and find the least worst options. In other words, the cleanest shirt in the dirty laundry hamper, for example. So we want to find which investment options might have low fees, for example, or have a reasonable investment strategy. Oftentimes, you might be looking for the index funds, for example, in the lineup, and those are typically going to be pretty reasonable choices. It may not make sense to invest 100% of your money in one of those funds, but if you have outside assets, maybe you can cobble things together so that you have all of your 401k money in that least worst option, and then in your other accounts, you can round out the portfolio and get exposure to other areas. For example, maybe there's a total bond market index in your 401k, or in a lot of cases, there's what's called a stable value fund, which can be sometimes, not always, which can be more attractive than you can find in other types of investments outside of 401k plans. That's typically if there's an insurance company handling the 401k plan. You might have your money in that total bond index or that stable value fund. And then outside of there in your other accounts, maybe in your Roth IRA, you're going to get exposure to the stock markets instead. Some 401k plans will also allow you to go outside of the standard investment menu. So they might have what's called a brokerage window, and that allows you to select different investments. Now, be careful here because the training wheels are off and you can get into a lot of different things that might have some risk and return characteristics that you're not quite familiar with or that might be spicier than you want. But if that's the case, you may be able to get a better set of investments to choose from. But what if you're ultimately just stuck in a 401k that is not that great? Well, a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one is that it's probably not permanent. So most people switch jobs periodically, might be every several years, every 10 years, something like that. So you may have something that's not so great now, but at some point you can get out of there, and it still probably helps you to save somewhere, even if that means in the 401k. But if you've got other better options, by all means, use those. The other thing is that 401k plans are likely to have higher fees, and that's because they have additional services attached. So there are record keeping and administrative fees. We're not going to get into that, but I've got additional videos that cover those topics. And those are things that are required to come with a 401k. So your IRA could be cheaper because it's just an individual retirement account, whereas a workplace plan has additional tasks attached to it and other service providers that are involved that want to get paid. If you are part of that group, and it's a big group that doesn't understand how 401k plan fees work, well, it's important to learn about that. So I've got a video popping up now that will explain all of that for you. So if you found any of this helpful, please leave a quick thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.